Hi, I'm Maricopa County Supervisor Bill Gates, and we're doing another one of our virtual coffee chats today. Thanks so much for joining us. And we really do have a special guest today. I'm really excited. A good friend of mine, Allison Barnett. And Allison and I have known one another for many years. And this is really a great opportunity to have someone come on and talk about the vibrancy in our communities and in our neighborhoods. And no one better represents that within District 3 than Allison. Allison has been a leader in the North 32nd movement for the past several years. And so I wanted to bring Allison on, talk to her about all that she's doing in the community, specifically along North 32nd, but then also to talk a little bit as a professional about some of the things that she's seen in the area as we battle with COVID-19 and other challenges here in this year of 2020. So, Allison, thanks so much for coming on.
Thank you for having me. It's always a treat to get to chat with you. So thank you.
Thanks so much. So for those folks who don't know you, tell us a little bit about you. Who are you, Allison?
Well, I made the move out to Arizona 6.5 years ago. Prior to that, I was a lifelong Californian and had spent half my life in Southern California and half in Northern California in the Bay Area. While in the Bay Area, I led a marketing team for an infill builder, which was very focused on creating quality new developments within existing residential. And so when I arrived to Phoenix and was shopping for a house, I looked at too many houses, but I discovered North 32nd on that very first day. And I was completely tapped out, and I saw a sign that said coffee, food, and wine. And I popped in there and discovered 32 Shea and grabbed a cup of coffee and cookies and ended up buying a house in that neighborhood, and subsequently got a notice in the mail about a potential apartment building. And I went to that very first meeting, which I think is the first time that Supervisor Gates and I met. And I was listening to the conversation, and what I saw when I arrived in North 32nd was tremendous potential. But so many of the buildings were dilapidated, and there was a lot of vacant land and parking and just not a lot of vibrancy. And
so Allison, I'm sorry for interrupting, but let's just, for people who may not be immersed in this,
sure.
Tell us, when you say North 32nd, what area are we talking about?
Sure. Yeah, North 32nd is a little bit confusing for some people because it's actually a street that runs far outside of where we are. But North 32nd really is 85028 and 85032, which is the Dreamy Draw Mountains to the south, all the way up to Union Hills by Paradise Valley Community College. And then it goes west to Cave Creek, and east we take in most of the way to Tatum. So it's I think I did the math, and it's 7 miles because we were working on a letter recently, and that was missing. So, you figure in some cases it's almost the size of San Francisco. But it's a great area, but it's got, it's got the broad spectrum of, property values from mobile homes all the way up to multi-million-dollar properties. And I think that's one of the tremendous assets that we have as a community.
So, Allison, other than, having lived here and having a passion about North 32nd, tell our viewers specifically what your connection is with North
32nd. Just in terms of
your role.
I mean, that evolves all the time. I like to say that my role is creating community. One of the places that I got involved with early on was creating some community events. When Supervisor Gates was the councilman, he used to coordinate an annual event in the spring, and I helped bring booths and other things to that to make it more of a destination. Because one of the things that's challenging when you have a community as large as ours is how you interact with each other, because maybe you're only seeing each other once in a blue moon at the grocery store. Well, it's different if you can come to a park and join together and have your kiddos dressed up in Halloween costumes, or if you're practicing yoga in the park. And so really, well, I think you referred to me as a leader long before I was quite comfortable with it. I prefer community gatherer. So that's just really good.
Yeah, I think you're being very modest. So, when I came on the city council, I talked to a lot of the people in the area, and they all kind of identified this as an area that had a great past, but maybe, had fallen somewhat. As we know, when the 51 went in, it pulled a lot of traffic off of North 32nd. So there were a lot of people in this community who wanted to see North 32nd, this area, which really didn't have a name back then, to sort of develop an identity. And Allison, you've been one of the key drivers in that. I know you're being very modest here, but in creating that sense of community. And it's more than just a sense of community in these activities you're talking about. There's been a lot of businesses that have opened in the area and a lot of development. And I would argue you know more about that than probably anyone. So maybe you could just kind of tick off all the, some of the different businesses that have opened up and different projects. Let's talk about what's happened so far. And then I want to talk, because you're always a fountain of information about what might be coming. Definitely. To the extent that you can share it with us.
Definitely. Like I shared, we really taken over to Tatum. And I would say when I started getting involved, quite frankly, you'd say North 32nd, and people were like, where? And then about 4 years ago, Mayor Stanton at the time was then like talking about us at meetings. And I thought, oh, okay, well, there's a little more context there. But, we were very lucky to have Rebecca Golden as kind of a visionary in terms of 32 Shea, which used to be a photomat. And she took that concept and evolved it into a cafe that had different environment, morning, noon, and night. And then during the last 6 years, probably about 4 years ago or so, she then expanded that Zen patio, which then made it even more of a destination. And while not great in COVID, in other times, she created these community tables. And so it was no longer a feeling of like, well, if you're going by yourself, you can't talk to someone. These, large tables became a way to interact with each other. Then we were lucky enough to have John Lane of Oso open one of his latest outposts, which now he's, I think, up to 6 or 7. But Oso Paradise Valley opened right at Tatum and Shea. Then we've also had Aioli Burger that morphed, and those guys, I think at least Kyle went to PVCC, and that's one of the things that is also an asset of our community. So many people went to Shadow Mountain and come back and create their life here. And so Aioli Burger is a classic example of that. We had Ace Hardware go in right there, so creating a much more local vibe of a hardware store. Michael Levy and Ann Lloyd Wright Levy opened right in the garden, just up the street. We have, let's see, Press has come in. I'm gonna. Zips is in the gelato spot. We have, Rebecca opened her new shop, Lovecraft. We have BlackRock with Chris and Ileana Dodge. We have
a rock climbing gym for those.
Yeah, a bouldering gym.
Really cool. And I think what you're identifying as you're going through these are all these really eclectic, different places. People wanted. It was clear in talking to the community, they wanted reasons to stay here, right? I mean, people wanted 100%. To spend their money in this community, but there weren't a lot of options. So they were 100%. Going to Desert Ridge, they were going to the Esplanade, and now due to this really organic thing, which you've been a big part of, Allison. Now people who live in the area can spend their money here in the area, which is, again, and I've talked with Mayor Stanton and others about this before, it's fairly unique in Phoenix. I mean, as Phoenix and Maricopa County evolves, there'll be more of this. Melrose is one that have this. But, I mean, still, you should be credited because this is a fairly new phenomenon in Phoenix and in Maricopa County, but it's what people are looking for.
Yeah, well, I think it was interesting when I first arrived here, there were so many people looking to live in Desert Ridge or the master plan communities, and there's been a much more there's been an influx of people, not currently with the traffic situation, but as the traffic situation evolved, and no longer was it a 15-minute commute, it became a 30 or 45-minute. People started realizing that time is valuable. It's not just, like an hour extra that you can spend at home is important. And so I think that that's one of the reasons that we've seen communities like North 32nd take this other evolution, and people realizing that they don't necessarily need the McMansion. They're perfectly comfortable in an adequate size home on a nice size lot built, and maybe remodeled, with parks right around. I mean, we have so many parks, and we have
Reserve,
and the hiking and the connectivity, like the way that you can access so much from right there just by walking out your front door. And particularly with the addition of the better bike lanes, we've seen more and more people utilizing that. We have a great bike store, Cranky Monkey.
Yes.
And I think I would say we can't just talk about all the good stuff. There's been challenges. And one of the challenges was that once people realized how big North 32nd actually is, they're like, well, why aren't you here yet? And we had to share with them that really, if we had taken it on all at once, it wouldn't have been possible. And
just, I'm sorry to interrupt, just to be clear for people. So you're referring to the fact that a lot of the development has been to the southern end.
Correct.
32nd and Shea, so this would be more of a concern of Greenway. Why hasn't it gotten up here?
Thunderbird. Yeah. And Cactus. And then, like I said, thankfully, Rebecca has gone in at Cactus with Lovecraft. It sounds like Chompy's is going in right across. I haven't talked to Chompy's yet, but that one seems to be very secure.
Okay, maybe some breaking news for some people out there. Exciting.
Yeah. So, because one of the things coming, which has been coming probably for 3 years, is Paradise Valley Mall will be reimagined, and we don't quite know what that looks like. The plans haven't been formalized. I know enough about it to be very excited about it. But what that means is a place like Chompy's, if they didn't fit into that, needed to find a new location. And Chompy's actually used to be on 32nd Street. So this is almost turned. And next to them will be a warehouse. They're doing just mail order stuff. And I've talked to the new owner, and he's very excited to be part of the community. We were lucky enough to have Euro House that used to be at 32nd and Shea reopen right around the corner from Lovecraft. And then they also have a shoe repair place. So pretty much if you're looking for something, check out North 32nd first, because you'll probably find that the business exists.
Yeah. No, that's great. And, in addition to all your sort of advocacy on behalf of North 32nd, you've also served on the Paradise Valley Village Planning Committee with the City of Phoenix. And now, for people who aren't familiar with that, tell us what that is and what you do serving on that.
Definitely. Well, breaking news there is I will be back on at the end of August. So
right.
Awesome. Councilwoman and mayor are reappointing me. So I will be sworn in August 26th, I think. So the Paradise Valley Village Planning Committee is really the first step for many of the developments to get approved. The way that Phoenix is set up are their villages, and these villages typically are a radius around something like Paradise Valley Mall. And so an interesting nuance of that is we actually cover almost to Kierland. So some of the projects we get aren't necessarily what we would consider Paradise Valley. But it's been great in terms of being able to be a participant in what that looks like. And so, for example, the little triangle piece of land where Life Storage is now situated, that was one of the first projects that I became involved with while on the planning committee. And at first I thought, gosh, we don't need another storage.
Right.
But they showed the architecture and I'm like, why wouldn't we? And then
that has to be one of the most beautiful storage structures I've seen anywhere.
Yeah.
And so thank you. So thank you for your involvement in getting a good project like that approved.
When it's interesting because, right, sometimes you have to step aside yourself, like from yourself on your own ideas. And literally, I would not have thought that I wanted a storage facility there. But when they proposed it and they showed the architecture and their willingness to work with us, it really made a lot of sense. And then across the street where the Orthodox Church used to be will now be a memory center. One of my best friends now lives in a small infill development that we helped get approved. Along Shea, there's another development happening where there's actually a local architect that reimagined, so we approved what's called residential office, which is a buffer between residential and commercial. And so it tends to be smaller, and we approved what we thought was good. And the new architecture is even better. And then down further by where Oso is, there will be some more condo units, I think is what they're called. But part of that, because the shopping center management that owns where Oso and Whole Foods are, as well as the one that owns Trader Joe's, plus this new one, they were so engaged with each other that we were also able in that one to add a signal and add better access to taking away.
Which has been huge. I think a real improvement to the area.
Yeah.
Well, Allison, thank you so much for coming on. It's so great to hear everything that you're working on, everything that's being done in the area. For people who want to learn more, get engaged, how can they do that?
So the best ways to get engaged right now, certainly you can sign up on north32nd.com. We will promise we will be getting that website up. But for now, that really just populates. We'll be sending the newsletter again within the next month. But for the most direct engagement, please join us on Facebook. It's just North 32nd on Facebook. There's also a North 32nd community group, a North 32nd business group, and we just started a group called North 32nd Families. And we really did that to help our local families with all the challenges that come from navigating this new space, and people who maybe need some support in being able to have someone else help supervise their children. So those are really the greatest ways to get involved. All of those have questions that you have to they have questions at the beginning. Please answer those, as well as agree to the community rules. We have those in place to keep this a very safe, community-oriented place. And if you answer all those, you're automatically in. And we do have a Instagram, which is North 32nd Street. And yeah, I think that's the best way to follow us.
Perfect. Well, thanks again, Allison, for coming. This was really enjoyed. This was so much fun. Thanks for everything you have done, and I know you'll continue to do in the future. And encourage everyone to go in and sign up for the North 32nd Facebook page. Get engaged. You will get the breaking news on the community. And if you live in another community and you're looking for how to get this sort of thing started, this is a great model for the rest of the valley, for the rest of Maricopa County, and would encourage you to reach out to Allison, perhaps through social media. So thanks again, Allison, and to everyone who's joined us today. Thank you so much for being a part of this virtual county coffee. We'll have more in the future, and we certainly continue to look forward to when we'll all be able to get together in person again. But for now, everybody, stay safe out there, and thanks again. Have a great day.
Thank you.